Everyone talks about how this makes you special, how you see what others don't see, how you feel more deeply, how you analyze situations in a way that seems almost superhuman. Everyone talks about gifts, but nobody talks about the price. No one talks about what it's like to live with a brain that never shuts off, with a body that never truly relaxes, with a mind that transforms every silence into a threat, and every glance into an enigma to be deciphered. Nobody talks about being tired, and if you've made it this far into the video, it's because you know this kind of tiredness very well. This isn't a video about superpowers. This is a video about what happens when your intelligence was born from the wrong place, when it didn't come from study, curiosity, lightheartedness, but from pain, from the need to survive. This is about traumatic intelligence, and about the side of it that nobody dares to show. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, do it now, because this is the kind of content you don't find just anywhere. It's not a lack of discipline. That's because their brains have been trained from an early age to never let their guard down. At some point in your life, perhaps in childhood, perhaps in a relationship, perhaps in an environment that was never truly safe, your nervous system learned one thing: relaxing is dangerous, because every time you relaxed, something happened. Every time you let your guard down, you were caught off guard. Every time you trusted that everything was all right, it wasn't. And then the brain did what brains do. It adapted. It created a permanent alert system, a radar that never turns off, an antenna that picks up everything: gestures, tones of voice, mood swings, words that weren't spoken. And that radar has saved you many times. That's real. But the problem is that radar systems don't know the difference between war and peace. They only know how to scam. And you carry that radar with you to every work meeting, to every family dinner, to every conversation with someone you love. You're always monitoring. The result? A tiredness that sleep doesn't cure. An exhaustion that has no logical explanation for those who have never experienced it. You sleep 8 hours and wake up drained. You take a vacation and come back heavier than when you left. Because their rest is never real rest. It's just a pause between one state of alertness and another. You don't feel things on the surface. When someone hurts you, it's not a pang, it's a wave. When something makes you happy, it's not a fleeting smile, it's a flood. When you worry about someone, it's not a light worry. It's a worry that takes up physical space in your chest. And sometimes people around you look at you and say, "You're exaggerating, you're too sensitive, you need to relax," as if feeling deeply were a factory defect. But what they don't understand, what perhaps you yourself are still learning, is that this intensity didn't come from nowhere either. It was born from the need to capture nuances, to perceive what was between the lines, to feel what was about to happen before it happened. It was a tool for emotional survival. The problem is that survival tools don't have a power-saving mode. They operate at maximum capacity all the time, and living life to the fullest all the time destroys you. Before we continue, if this makes sense to you, leave a like now, and comment below which of these first 2 blocks represented you the most. This helps me a lot to understand who's on the other side of the screen. You end a conversation, but it doesn't end for you. You replay, you reassess, you think about what you said, what you didn't say, what you could have said differently. You analyze the other person's tone, the pause they made before answering, the way they looked or didn't look, and his mind constructs scenarios, dozens of them, and he tests each one, looking for the most likely outcome, looking for threats, looking for where the danger lies. This is called overthinking, and almost everyone who has lived in unpredictable environments does it. Because when you grew up in a place where you never knew what was going to happen, where someone's mood could change in seconds, where calm could turn into an explosion without warning, your brain learned to simulate the future, trying to predict, preparing, never being caught off guard. And so, even now, even if the situation is completely safe, the brain continues simulating. It continues analyzing. It continues looking for what could go wrong, not because you're anxious by nature, but because anxiety has been, for a long time, your only form of control. Trust is easy when your history has taught you that people are trustworthy. But what if he didn't teach? When what you've learned is that love comes with conditions, that security is temporary, that the people who should be there, sometimes, simply weren't. Trusting isn't a natural act. It's an act of radical courage. It's going against everything your nervous system is screaming. That's dangerous. And this manifests in your relationships in ways you might not even recognize as trauma. It appears when someone is quiet, and you start wondering what you did wrong. When someone takes too long to reply and your stomach churns. When everything seems too good to be true and a voice inside you whispers, "This won't last." It's not jealousy. It's not cheap insecurity. It's a nervous system that has learned that calm is the moment before the storm, and carrying that burden into every relationship, romantic, friendship, professional, is a weight that people who have never experienced it simply cannot fathom. There's a very specific kind of loneliness in being the person who notices everything. You walk into a room and immediately feel the tension that no one else noticed. You see the dynamics happening beneath the conversations. You can tell when someone is pretending to be okay, when two people are angry with each other but are smiling, and sometimes you try to speak, and people look at you with that "you're making things up" expression. And eventually, you stop talking. You learn to be the silent observer, the one who sees but doesn't say, the one who knows but keeps to yourself. And this creates a huge distance between you and the world, because you are always one step ahead in your interpretation of reality, but completely alone in that perception. It's like watching a movie knowing the ending while everyone around you is surprised by each scene. It's not superiority, it's isolation. You walk into a room and you can already feel the collective mood of the environment. Someone arrives sad and you feel their weight as if it were your own. Someone is angry, and your physical body reacts to that anger, even if it's not directed at you. Someone needs help, and you, almost automatically, switch to caring mode. This has a name: involuntary emotional employment. And it's exhausting in a way that few understand, because you don't choose to absorb it. It just happens. And after a day like that, after carrying the emotions of 3, 4, 5 people, you arrive home empty. Not tired like someone who worked hard, empty like someone who has been drained. And then comes the distancing, the isolation that the people around you don't understand. The you disappeared, that you receive and don't quite know how to explain. Because how do you explain that sometimes you need to be alone, not because you don't like people, but because being with people consumes you in a way that you haven't yet learned to manage? There comes a point that happens to almost everyone who lives like this, a moment when the system simply stops. It's not a decision, it's not weakness, it's the body saying, "I can't go on anymore." It might feel like burnout. It might feel like depression. It might feel like that sensation of looking at your own life from the outside, unable to connect with anything. You wake up and feel nothing, or you feel everything at once and can't distinguish one emotion from another. You unintentionally drift away from the people you love. You stop replying to messages. You stop showing up. You stop functioning in the places where you always functioned. And the cruelest part is that, even in this collapse, your mind doesn't shut down. It just changes targets. Instead of monitoring the external environment, it starts attacking you. You're weak. You're exaggerating. Look at all the things you have, and yet you can't seem to function. Collapse is not the end of your strength. It's proof of how much you endured without ever being allowed to stop. And this is where I need to stop and tell you something that perhaps no one has ever said in such a clear way. You didn't become that person to thrive. You became that person in order to survive. All that sharp intelligence, all that perception, all that ability to feel deeply, to analyze everything, to grasp what's between the lines, to adapt in seconds. None of this came from a place of abundance. It came from a place of necessity, from an environment that demanded you be smarter, more attentive, more careful, faster than any child or adult should ever need to be. And you went, you adapted, you survived. But the problem is that their nervous system never received the message that the war was over. So he continues fighting, in times of peace, in safety, in love, in moments that should be light. He keeps fighting because he never learned that it's safe to stop. There's a confusion living inside you that's perhaps the hardest to resolve. You can no longer distinguish between intuition and anxiety, when that feeling in your stomach is genuine wisdom, your system warning you about something real, and when it's your past projected onto the present, when you are perceiving something that is actually happening, or when you are creating a threat where none exists. And that's distressing, because your perception is often accurate. You've been right too many times to completely ignore it, but you've also suffered too much from threats that existed only within your nervous system. How can you trust yourself when you no longer know what is signal and what is noise? There's no simple answer to this question, and any video that gives you a simple answer is lying to you. What I can tell you is this: The fact that you're asking this question is already the beginning of something different. The problem is not your conscience. Your consciousness is real. Your perception is real. Your depth is real. The problem is that your body never learned that it's safe to turn it off. You never learned that you can exist without being in survival mode, that you can trust without it being naive, that you can relax without it being a trap. And this can't be solved with a list of tips. It can't be solved with a video. It can't be solved quickly, but it can be resolved slowly, with awareness, with the right people, with the kind of inner work that begins precisely the moment you stop asking yourself, what's wrong with you, and start understanding what happened to you. You are not broken. You are someone who learned to survive in a way that is now too costly to continue. And recognizing this, truly, without romanticizing or glorifying it, is the beginning of learning to live in a different way. If this video touched you deeply, leave a comment below. It can be a word. It can be a phrase. I read everything. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is to make them feel less alone. If you liked it, leave a like. It helps this content reach those who need it. And the next video is appearing on the screen now. I'll see you there.